Ladies and gentlemen, today I am joined by Helen from Home Instead, and she's going to introduce herself because it's one of those moments I can't be bothered and it's a Friday. So, Helen, tell us all a little bit about Home Instead.
So I'm Helen Brown. I am the franchise owner of Home Instead Portsmouth. Home Instead, we are a UK franchise that covers some 250 offices now across the UK. We are the largest provider of private home care in the UK. We're the only Princess Royal Trainer Award holders for dementia care. We're the only Princess Royal Trainer Award holders for end-of-life care. And we're the only care provider directly partnered with Parkinson's UK.
So I thought we were going to start this softly, but no.
You asked me about Home Instead.
Straight in with end of care. Straight in there. So I think what we'll do is we'll break tradition. We'll go to the hard stuff, then we'll go to the soft
and then
stuff
go nice
after. Let's do that. So, I mean, obviously, I've only known about Home Instead since we've obviously started talking and then subsequently started working together. And there's some massive differences that I think need to be talked about, right?
Yeah.
So for anyone who's listening and anyone who's gone through, end-of-life care or any version of care, I want you to think about the moment that you're told you can only have 15 minutes of care.
Okay.
15 minutes of care. You could be on your deathbed. You could be needing assistance to make a cup of coffee. Now, Home Instead don't do that, which is a core principle. And I think it is possibly the most beautiful thing I've heard, second most beautiful thing I've heard, actually, when you get to that point. Talk to me about that logic.
It's a frustration and it makes me supremely angry. I actually had a conversation yesterday with the NHS over this. You cannot get to know anybody in 15 minutes. And actually, most care providers are there delivering a 15-minute service with a raft of people that they have going in who can't possibly know who they are actually visiting. So Betty will have a 15-minute visit from Tom, and then Harry, and then Agnes, and actually a real life example that happened just yesterday was a client that we have who is, the lady is cared for in bed. We also support the husband. There's 4 visits going in for that particular lady, but the husband also has 2 visits tagged into this from us as well. He was unwell in the morning. We knew he wasn't. We spoke to 111. 111 assessed him and they sent out a paramedic, and the paramedic said, no, he's fine. But because the same caregiver had gone back out later that day, she knew that actually he was further unwell than when they'd seen him in the morning. So the whole kind of protocols took place again. Now, not only do that team know that couple, because there's only 10 of them go in total, and given that there are 4 visits a day for 2 people each visit, that's a massive amount of visits across the week within that for just 10 people across 7 days. But it's the same 10 people, and they know that actually these people, what they're expecting to see. And if that's not how they're presented, they know that something's wrong. When you've got a 15-minute drop-in visit, it's enough time to ask you if you want, I don't know, a cup of tea. How are you ever going to have your shower? How are you actually going to have a conversation? How are you actually going to spend any time talking to that person and understanding who they are and what's actually important to them? One of the things that you and I talked about a while ago was the fundamental difference in who we are over coming to care about somebody. And we talked about this twice now, because actually most care providers will come and they will, in their own mind, care for you. They'll do their bare minimum to make sure that you are safe, I would hope. But actually, they're not caring about you because they're too busy thinking about what they've got to do within that period of time that's been allocated to them to actually know whether those tasks have been achieved, and then they have to move on. And then they've got to work out their travel time in between and where they're going next and who they're going to go to. If we care about you, which is what we do, your outcomes matter to us. And that's huge. Because actually the people, if you think about in your own world, the people that you care about, there'll be a lot of people that you care for, you know, and there will be, but you'll not be spending any time later on in the day thinking about them. They'll be in your day and you'll do things and you'll talk about them, and they may drop into conversation later. Oh yeah, they did that, and they'll come back into you. But the people that you genuinely care about are not very far away from your thoughts. Often. That's how we approach our care. Every single one of the franchise owners has a personal reason as to why we do what we do. It's part of how we're chosen, actually, to have a franchise. We are not, unlike every other franchised care provider out there, you can rock up with your checkbook, and provided it's big enough, they'll hand you over the franchise. They want you to run a business that's going to be successful for them. Home Instead want to know who you are. Why do you want to do it? Why do you want to do it with us? Why is it important to you? And all of us have got a reason somewhere in our background that actually it's personal to us. It's actually our tagline because it's true. And within it, we are then charged with finding people for whom it's personal to them.
So I want to, all of that I know to be true because I've sat there and I've spoken to you about it and I've gone through it. What are the challenges that we face in your business and you face obviously every day is the 15-minute thing really exists from a budgetary control
Absolutely,
thing.
it does.
Now, I really struggle with that because I know what your prices are.
Yeah.
And you would openly say, we're not the cheapest.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that. And there's because we actually need the time to do it. You know, we can't just... So I think about 15 minutes. I mean, I've spoken to you this week more than 15 minutes.
Yep.
So how do you... I mean, it just doesn't work from a care point of view. I haven't asked for a shower. Do you know what I mean? So how do you... It doesn't work. It actually just doesn't work. I mean, I think, you know, if we make a cup of tea in the office, it takes 10 minutes for a round of tea. So it fundamentally doesn't work. But the thing I want to talk about with the budget specifically is when we talk about, you know, councils and bodies are having to reduce costs, and you know, they're under scrutiny. There's the crisis that there is the crisis. You know, this is a real thing. But one of the things I like about the budget to kind of change it is a set amount.
Yeah.
We know that our hourly rate is X.
Yep.
And that's the rate for the hour. So provided we can really match it and do a really good job, it's actually money really well spent. And I really struggle with it because I you know, the hourly rate will fluctuate. Don't get me wrong. Like, it will change next year. It has to. Cost of living changes, etc. But right now, if someone calls and says, I need 5 hours a week, we roughly know what that's going to be.
Yes.
They're not caught out by added extras. They're not caught out by, you know, shoddy times or random people turning up. They're getting really good quality. And I find it really interesting that in the care world, we don't have the M&S argument of, well, you know, do you see what I mean? It's like, just park them in the cupboard and leave them be.
So the whole 15-minute thing is a fallacy, quite frankly, because you are quite right. You cannot achieve anything within 15 minutes. And if you are spending 15 minutes and your budget is X for care, you can't have the moon on a stick. It's as simple as that. Something has got to give. And actually, if you were to have the hour that's needed, that 15-minute cost to you far outstrips what we would charge you. Most 15-minute provision is somewhere between about £18 and £20. You're working on then, you'd multiply that by 4, you've got an £80 an hour rate for what's needed. Our rate is £35 an hour. And within it, setting that up for what's needed within there. I'll talk to you about Anne. We arrived and Anne had a 15-minute visit in the morning. And I arrived to do a care consultation with Anne because she was unhappy with her current care provider. Anne was on a rise recline chair that had been left in a semi-vertical place, and she was literally kind of wedged on the chair. Her skirt was on back to front and not zipped up.
Good Friday night.
Good Friday night. And her tights were on an angle down by her knees. They'd actually given her breakfast while she was sat on the toilet and had run out of time to actually finish dressing her, and they had to leave. Now, they weren't due back in until that evening. She was allocated 2 15-minute visits a day. She would have been like that all day. So the first part of my visit with her was just putting her right, and she was in tears whilst I was doing this. And so going back to your budget thing, one of the things that actually we realised very quickly was that people don't like nasty surprises. The care sector is full of them. You suddenly have a bank holiday Monday, you've been hit for double charges, you've gone past 5 o'clock in the evening and the change of times happened and you're having care before 9, how dare you? We want something else and we're going to charge you for the privilege of you needing care before office hours or out of office hours or heaven forbid at the weekend. You phone a care provider, they'll give you their baseline fee. They will not tell you, because we've done this as a ring round, they will not tell you what the actual cost of your 5:30 till 7:30 visit will actually be. They'll give you their baseline figure. They'll start it with that point and then move on from there. So we flatlined our fees completely. So our £35 an hour doesn't matter what time of day you've got, doesn't matter what service you've got, doesn't matter whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday or in fact Christmas Day. Your fee is fixed. So May this year, 31 days plus 3 bank holidays this coming May, or May just gone. For most care providers, and in fact I know one very well-known franchise that killed most of their care calls because they didn't want to have to pay the staff double over that, found the minimum number of clients that they could actually get through that day without it causing a problem. And yet we were there just delivering care as it needed to be within the same fixed fee. So that May bill was no different to the June bill, was no different to there. We don't charge double for our bank holidays. We're not charging extra for our weekends. It's a fixed fee. So if we're looking at a bill that's going to cost you £600 a month, it's not going to cost you any more than that, whether it's May or December with Christmas or whenever.
So there's 2 things I want to say about that, because one thing I didn't realise, and I should have done because it's completely normal in normal business, let alone your sector, is so we'll use the £600 argument, right? So you got your £600 care. The only time it changes, and this is the thing that I thought was really, really good that you brought up when we sat down and spoke, was the reviews. And the reviews are not, we want to add on to budget, but actually, times have changed. Do you need more?
Yep.
Do you need less?
Yeah.
And actually, I really like that, quite refreshing, that moment, because there'll be some people that go to care that will get better.
Yep.
Not maybe 100%, but their needs will change. And I liked how refreshing it was that it was just, it would just adjust. So it's not that you don't know, you do know exactly what you're going to be charged, which is key, because it's not, it's...
People need to be able to budget each month. And actually, if you've got fluctuating bills each month, how are you actually going to manage that?
People also need to know that the person they're caring for is being able to get dressed and not having their skirt halfway around their arse. Like that's not that's inhumane.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. I'm going to go back to the 15-minute hour thing again, because I think there's something else that in your recruitment, your retention that you've spoken about, which I thought was really, really key. So we look at care. Yeah. We look at care being, so if I can, let's just pretend, there's someone that's going out to care, they need that care, they need showers, they need feeding, all of that stuff, which, everyone, I sit there and say, if it ever happens to me, shoot me. And I think so many people say that, right? But, the reality is this sector is there for a reason. People do need looking after. So let's look at this 15-minute thing and whatnot. Now, I know for me, if I was providing care for someone, I couldn't leave someone feeding them their breakfast in the toilet with their skirt hanging around their arse. Now, I understand the budget constraints. We've talked about that.
I'm going to talk about 2 members of staff that I interviewed, and it covers this off. So we had a very lovely lady called Louise, and Louise was talking to me about her neighbour who works for a local provider. And Louise does what she actually works for our team in Havant, but she actually lives in Southsea. And she was talking about this neighbour who was horrified that she would want to work for a company that made her, her words, made her do all of her hours. Because this girl that actually works locally for another provider is paid for 4 hours in the evening, but in her words, if she hustles hard enough, she can be home in 2.5. She is the sort of person that you're talking about. As far as she's concerned, she does the bare minimum or less. It's all about getting paid and getting home. Louise, on the other hand, wouldn't think to do what you've just said. She wouldn't be thinking about where she was going or what was happening next or whatever. She would make sure that Anne was comfortable, she was safe, and she was well looked after, and actually happy for her to move on before she did.
So when, I guess to tie up this subject, because I do think it's important, if someone's looking for care, so no one wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm going to look at care providers. Yeah. It's a shock, right? It happens when it happens, yeah. Okay? So you've got whatever information you've got to hand at that moment in time. One thing for anyone who listens to this, and you know, God forbid it doesn't happen for a long time for you, but anyone who does, ask whatever care provider it is, what's the hourly rate? Yeah. What's a full hour? Because even the impact just on the member of staff of the pressure of having to leave and get to your next, it doesn't work. It's inhumane.
You need to know, you need to be asking questions, well, how long are you leaving between your visits? Because actually, have they got time to get to the next place? So do you know that your staff are going to arrive on time? What's your contingencies? How are you building your teams? Because actually, if I'm looking at somebody that we're looking after for 5-6 hours a week, we'll have 2 people. But you'll know who they are, and you'll have agreed with us that those 2 people are coming at 10 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the evening or whenever it happens to be. But you'll know that it's Sarah and you'll know that it's John. You'll know who it's going to be. And actually, we'll put 2 in regardless, on the basis that actually Sarah and or John at some point will want a holiday.
Be ill.
They'll be ill. But we don't want to compromise you having to have somebody parachuted in and a whole revolving door of carers at that point to who they're going to be. So our care professionals are paired or trioed within our clients so that actually you're going to get the same people, the same team who know you coming forward. That matching process is crucial. And the matching process isn't just about our availability. It's who's right for you. We've had somebody who wanted to converse in French, so we found a French speaker. We had somebody who actually wanted home-cooked meals, which happens a lot and we're really happy to do. But this guy wanted fresh rabbit pie, and he taught our care pro how to make
do that.
rabbit pie.
Yeah.
You know, how beautiful is that? It's just this, and they were happy to do that. This isn't just microwaving a 5-minute meal.
Well, you can't in a 15-minute time if you've got the other things to do.
And can you see whether they've eaten it? Can you actually see whether they're choking on it? Do you know that they're safe with the food? Because you've had to leave.
Scary, right?
Really scary.
I'm willing to bet a month's turnover, without a shadow of a doubt, that the 15-minute visits, the turnover and dissatisfaction for those clients is
huge,
immensely more than an hour. Just forget the people, forget the quality, forget the matchmaking side of it, forget all of that. Even just the timeline, it just doesn't appear to work for me. What can be done to make the budget better? So, because it's all very well saying it doesn't work, and you know, I do agree with you. There will be people who don't have access to that budget.
Yeah.
How does it get better for people? What can we do? Is there a fund? Is there, what happens? Because it's got to be a, you know.
So people, and in fact, I was with a gentleman and his son week before last, and I directed them to attendance allowance. So they are looking at, son just wants a couple of hours a week for his dad, just to make sure he's getting to appointments on time. Winter's coming in, Dad's going on the bus at the moment, but he'd rather somebody came with him and he was there. And I said to him, I said, you can have 4 hours a week by just applying for your attendance allowance. The budget will cover that extra 2 hours for that. And within that, we can go somewhere nice with your dad. You've got all of that there. Attendance allowance is non-means tested, and it is a government allowance to anybody who is entitled to receive care. Now, the sheer fact that you are bringing in a care provider to have a consultation means that actually
there's a reason.
There's a reason for it, so that's you're ticking that box, and you've just got the form to fill within there. The biggest single barrier to that 15 minutes is our local governments and our national governments. And actually, hats off to our national CEO, Martin Jones, who sits at government level. He spends, given that he lives in the Northwest, he spends an awful lot of time at 10 Downing Street championing the cause of not the 15-minute, 30-minute visits, about the benefits of an hour and how nationally we can actually make that a reality for people. You cannot have and again, that term of revolving door of caregivers coming into your house and expect that care to be safe, because they just don't know who you are.
We've talked about a particular part of marketing for you when we first started talking, and I want to evoke this with the audience for a sec, because I find it really, really hard. So I've got a dog. Everyone knows the dog. Dembe is a pampered pooch by any stroke of the imagination. Now, we've all popped into corner shops. We've all popped into places. Now, to be fair, I don't do this with Dembe, actually. But we've all walked past people with their dog chained to a railing or something for 2 minutes, while someone pops into a shop, pops out. Now, the reason I don't do it is because I would fear so much of losing that boy that I would be gutted if anything happened. Now, I'm lucky, I've lived in very nice areas. The chances of someone taking Dembe is pretty unrealistic. I can't imagine he'd go very far unless you've got treats, at which point, if you've got treat, he's yours, all right? Bacon or sausage, Uncle Terence feeding him, game over, he's a goner, right? But there's this image of abandonment that I've spoken to you about this kind of like, would I chain my grandmother to a fence and leave her there and only go and see her for 15 minutes? Yeah. And it's horrible, but that's kind of, in some cases, the reality of where it's at. And I've said, I wouldn't do it to my dog.
So I had the privilege of meeting 2 daughters on Friday. They actually came into the office to meet with me. And the consultant had said to them, their mother's been diagnosed with dementia. She's actually not coping terribly well. And even at consultant level, he was saying to them, a couple of 15-minute visits a day. That's nationally happening at our dementia clinics. The wider care aspect of who they are, what's actually needed within there, is just lost. People are afraid to step out of what does your mum need? What's right for her? What's comfortable for you as a family? Are you comfortable with this? And actually, they were horrified with what the consultant had actually said to them.
And that's the education piece, right?
And that's the education piece, because actually they were, hang on a second. Well, what happens to her for the 23 and a half hours a day that actually nobody's there with her? Do I know that she's got a cup of tea or having lunch or taken her medication safely? Of course I don't.
So people would say Home Instead's more expensive. But it's not really. When you actually work it out, it's not really. When you actually, and I think it's really key that message is out there. Because
there is a difference between expensive and value for money, and actually the things can be expensive and you're paying for a label or a name because of that. You get something that's value for money, the cost is immaterial, because actually then you've got what you need, what those outcomes are going to be for you within those. The amount of times I've regretted buying a cheap pair of shoes because they've not even seen me through the kind of period of time that I've needed them for, versus spending a little bit extra to actually have them. Funnily enough, the boots that I've got on today came to me as a Christmas present for my son about 4 years ago.
And they've lasted.
And they've lasted. And he was chuffed to bits with having spent that bit on me for that, because of that. The actual overall value for that. And when you're deeming that, when you're looking at that for people that we care about, nursery care is a really good kind of comparison, actually. You know, you don't look at nursery care, you go and you get a feel for the place. You really go and get to meet the people within there who's going to be looking after little Johnny. You know, actually, are they really going to focus on him in this crowd of people here?
Is it a safe place? Is it a safe building?
Is he going to be happy within all of that? You make all of those assessments. When you look at care home provision versus home care provision as well, people actually will look at care home provision very much on that kind of nursery basis. Always going to have lots of friends to play with.
Job done.
Job done. Actually, very rarely does that happen. They tend to get isolated in a crowd, within a room, and a very few amount of people looking after them, and their needs are dwindling. Come back to that value for money about home care. If you look at it as a pure cost, you've got one-to-one support for less than it would cost you for that.
So there's two things to tie up the care part of this segment. I think there's two things I want to say, or I think should be said. The first one is, if someone's unhappy with the care being provided, or they think there should be more, the first thing I'm going to say to anyone who's listening or watching, ask questions.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. So, you know, speak to people like Home Instead and go, well, actually, what would it be? What could be the differences? Yeah. You shop around for holidays, shop around, ask questions. You know, when it happens in the moment, a hospital, for example, will give you the limited information they have at that moment in time. And you know, I hate to say it, from a marketing point of view, Google only shows you who pays the most.
Yeah.
You know, unless it's good SEO. And you know, so I would say ask questions. And the other thing that I joked about the M&S side of this, and that, you know, is it expensive? Is it value for money? No, I think we've got a different word here. Time's priceless, and I think everyone would agree that I'd rather an hour than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would disagree. So, yeah, ask more questions.
And actually, that timeless or priceless element to that,
it's true.
You're never going to get that back.
No.
You know, and these daughters that I met with last week, bless them, I actually made one of them tear up. And I said to her that what we're actually trying to achieve for you is that parent-child relationship again. And she said, that's the most beautiful thing I've heard, because they're caring for mum at the minute and they want their mum back. You know, they're all of the things that their mum was to them when they were younger
is changing.
And they're struggling with that. And having that change, and faced with a sea of unknowns, and the consultants who I could quite cheerfully strangle, saying 15 minutes and just tick the box for there. Assuage your own guilt for that. Get something in and she'll be fine. And they're sat there knowing that that's not what she needs. It's not what they want. It's not going to give them back that peace of mind of, well, what happens at lunchtime then? You know, it's like, well, who's making lunch? Can she? Is she able to? Don't know. And it's all of those things. That peace of mind is really, and that parent-child relationship, we
lose. So for anyone who has any questions, just Google Home Instead Portsmouth. Helen will talk to you. yeah.
Getting me to stop, that's a problem.
Well, we can do that. We can get you to stop. So for anyone who's cried, please email support at, I'm joking. But it's serious questions. So let's move on to some of the other positive stuff, because I know Home Instead does a lot in the local area. So come on then. Let's talk about the commitment to Portsmouth itself and all the actual work you've done. So, Spark, let's start there.
Okay. So Home Instead is the only UK provider to have its own charity also. And we are very proud of that, actually. It was originally the Bring Joy Foundation, and we changed it to Home Instead Charities. And Spark, I was fortunate to meet Becky literally as Spark opened in Sherlock's on its opening day.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I struck a friendship that's now kind of 3 years into its kind of transition.
She's a pain like that, isn't she?
She doesn't.
Hangs around, that Becky.
She hangs around, and she's just a joy.
But
what I realised very quickly, so that the initial kind of inroads with Becky was actually providing her with one of our team. So we actually put one of our care professionals into every session that they had, so that there was a slightly more trained is the right word, person on their team. So we covered the cost of that as a business, and I literally every single time Becky was open, they would be there, so that somebody in
it's very cool.
So that was kind of how that started. And obviously as that grew, we were there more, and then more people started to get to know what we were doing within there. And actually the care pro that was in there at the time, we kept just one in there, so that again it comes back to that matching. She was a great match for the whole environment within there, and she became a real part of what was actually happening within the whole of that. We then looked at wider ways that we could bring in more recognition to Spark, and other ways that actually we could help them to grow. So we called upon our charity to support, and we applied for grant funding for the first year. And the maximum grant that's awarded by Home Instead Charities, whether it's still the same, but it's £1,500. So we applied for a £1,500 grant, and within that was awarded. So the charity rightly comes to the franchises to say, well, look, we're really happy to support the causes that you're really interested in, but we need some support to help us maintain our pot. And so that first year, they looked to us to try and replenish half of what's been given as a minimum. So looked at us to do that as an organisation. And at that point, our team was really very small. So I put on my running shoes, and I ran the Great South Run and raised our £750 plus back to them for that one. And having kind of replenished that, we then looked at Spark again and said, well, hang on a second, what can we do this year? What's different? And Becky and I met, and we have a regular catch up at the Queen's, and we decided that the Queen's would be a lovely venue to host something lovely for people at Christmas time. So I went back to the charity and said, look, can we have another £1,500, please?
Bet they loved you.
Bet they loved me. And so within that, we then set up an event that had, I think, 112 people come to, that we provided Christmas lunch for at the Queen's. And that £1,500, I think, was against a total bill of £2,200. So there were lots of other organisations that then paid into what they were doing to ensure that that was actually free for everybody that attended. There wasn't a cost for anybody. But the charity really stumped up a whole amount into that, and I was really grateful for that. And we are currently looking at doing a hamper at Christmas that will go to local business to try and put something into the hamper to raffle for that. And we're doing a baton relay around Langston Harbour in the springtime, again, to kind of replenish the pot, because we're happy to continue supporting Spark. We're part of their ambassador program. So again, on a monthly basis, we help them within that. But when they launched at the Pompey Centre, we realised that the footfall for there would be quite different to where it had been at Sherlock's.
I mean, you and I were in there, and it was. I mean, I think we had to kick someone off, and we did kick someone off. I want that noted for the record. We kicked someone off seats because I mean, it was absolutely heaving.
Yeah. And within all of that, you get all sorts of walks of life. So prior to them opening, we delivered our dementia workshop to the entire volunteer team. We're planning to do it again because the team has evolved and changed, and there's people that are new within there
and grown,
and that's the point. And actually, the success of Spark is so amazing that there are new people in there that don't have that experience. So we launched our dementia program with them, so that actually the team were confident with who may come through their doors. And our relationship with Spark has just continued, and mine with Becky. It's just a joy to actually. She
does hang around, doesn't she?
She does. she's very much there, and I saw her yesterday. So it's she's a good girl. But we realised very quickly that actually Spark was just the tip of the iceberg for our dementia rollout. Portsmouth's a very big city, and right from when I opened. And in fact, my initial business plan set out to transform Portsmouth in its dementia rate. So if you were to read my original plan, I had within there 3 key target acquisitions over what I wanted to do with dementia. Portsmouth Football Club, Gun Wharf, and the Naval Dockyard and Mary Rose were the 3. All 3 now are on our rolling program with our dementia workshops. So we go and we deliver these free workshops to their staff teams, and generally it's their frontline staff, so that they are confident with whoever comes through. And the aim for this is actually for families to be able to go back to these venues confidently with mum and dad. It isn't necessarily just about giving the staff that training and knowledge as to what it's about, going back to the families going, we've made this place a great place for you to go as a family unit again. Feel confident that mum and dad or grandma and granddad are going to be really well supported here. And that opening that up, and again for business, it gives business that confidence to be able to go, okay, we've got more people that we can see now. So actually the whole knock-on effect of it, right from business growth within what we're doing and that business development of who else can we see in our doors, to actually that family support at the other end of it, those simple dementia program workshops that we do have opened so many more of those. And what we do is we go and spend time with each of the organisations beforehand. We go and meet, tell me what your challenges are. You know, what's here. This isn't just a one-size-fits-all program that actually we've gone out with. We go and make it right for that person, that group. We've now done this with 2 sets of GP practices. And in fact, the Lighthouse group, who we worked with first, have changed their entire reception area and how patients are received into the practice based on what we actually spoke to them about. We made their environment dementia aware, so that actually people came in and they weren't overwhelmed with what was going on. There wasn't too much around. They knew what to do within that, so that those people coming in there could feel confident about going to wherever they needed to go within the surgery. And so we then ran that with the Trafalgar group a few weeks back now as well. And so having Portsmouth Carer Centre was another one. They you know, running programs for people that are struggling to access that, just that baseline knowledge.
It's really important.
It's really important. Whenever you're given a diagnosis or something that's new to you, people generally feel isolated because they don't know anybody else that's happening to. You know, they don't know, and they don't know who to turn to.
Well, they weren't expecting it, were they?
They weren't expecting it. And actually, up until that point, they've lived their lives quite blithely unaware of...
Blissfully unaware.
You know,
the
whole thing is just like, that's nothing to do with me. now. And then it is. And then all of a sudden, those taboos are just locked down around them and they don't know who to speak to. So we've actually just gone out to our clients' families, actually. And we're making and developing a purely bespoke dementia program for our own families to bring them all together in a safe space to go, guys, this is who you all are. You know, this is happening to all of you. This isn't just about you and your family. Take strength in that. And the more we can give people that training and that teaching and that knowledge and that support, the better it will be. And again, we've done this right from day one. They're free programs. Funnily enough, I was challenged by somebody over why we didn't charge for them. We don't charge for them because actually I don't feel that this is something, when you're teaching somebody something and it enhances their life, why should I charge for that?
I mean, we both share very similar values on education and how it works. You have to put out a little bit. You know, it is the right thing to do. It's absolutely right. I want to stick with something with Portsmouth Football Club for a second.
Yep.
So you've done the dementia awareness trainings, you've done all that, but you've also
we've got more to come.
But you've also done sessions where you're down there just raising awareness.
Yes.
And I think that was really, really clever because we spoke about this and again, you actually had pushback from other people going, well, why on earth are you doing that? And actually, a big part of what you believe is just being rooted in the community. And it shines through everywhere. So, you know, whether it's gone more further. And I've never heard you explain it to me. And actually what I'm trying to do is make those places safe for people to visit back. That's new. That's a new one that I've heard from you. And actually looking at it, it's like, well, actually, that's probably the soundest business plan I've ever heard. It might take a while because you've got to get people to go through that cycle. But I really like it.
Do you know what? When I first spoke to Lena at Portsmouth Football Club, she's just fab. And I said to her, we want sons to come back with their dads and their granddads back to the football. We want the whole family to be back here, not just, oh, we can't take granddad anymore. You know, actually, granddad's been a lifelong Pompey fan. He wants to be there. And when you bring people back into their environment that they know and they love, they thrive.
Yeah, because it's their happy place.
It's their happy place. It's absolutely it. Yeah. You know, and it's breaking down that, well, actually, if we make it safe for Grandad to be here, why can't he come? Because he's going to absolutely love it.
So what I'm learning is I'm going to need a desk, a laptop, and Star Trek in the background when I need care. That's how that's going to work.
And well, I'll be there with you.
That's worrying, isn't it? That's not good. Right, talk to me about awards, because you've won a few.
Yeah.
Let's be proud. Come on. What have we won? Let's do it.
All right. So the first, nationally.
Well, let's start with the big one, shall we?
Yeah. Okay. So nationally, we won the Queen's Award for innovation based around our relationship-led care. And to date, we're still the only provider to have actually won that award.
Just no small fish, that one. That's
no
good.
Small fish. And I kind of hope it comes across. Our relationship really is key to who we are. Lots and lots and lots of providers in their literature will cite companionship as a task. It's who we are.
Makes a massive difference.
And you're not going to be friends with everyone. So just because you want companionship and I'm going to send round Bob, how's that going to actually work? I need to know who you are and I need to know who's in my team to know that Bob's going to be right for you first.
I just don't want Bob to come to my house ever.
No, well, there you go.
Me and Bob aren't getting on.
No,
that's where this goes.
And yet, most care providers will go, well, I'm sorry about that, chum, because that's when Bob's free.
So I know Terence wanted to ask what your aspirations are for the next 5 years. Now, I think that's a long time.
Yeah.
So let's look at the next. You want to change a year. What do you want in a year? What really, really will matter to the business?
Oh, wow.
I can make it 5 years and make it 3 wows.
Could, yeah. Okay. Aspirationally, nationally, and locally, we want to become the Hoover of care So you don't vacuum, you don't Dyson.
You hoover.
You hoover.
Yeah.
You know, and actually we want people to want Home Instead.
I bet that stung Dyson just then, hearing
Yeah,
that. Because
and I'm sorry,
I own a
babes.
Dyson. I'm
You
saying
know?
I'm so sorry.
But we don't vacuum. We hoover up. And actually, it's really, and yeah, I have a Dyson too. In fact, I don't now. I have a Shark. So I've kind of moved on again.
Make up your mind.
Yeah. But it is that I certainly don't go around and shark. You know, but I want people to have care at home instead.
I need you to change that when you're doing it now. I think it'd be more fun.
You know,
what are you doing? I'm sharking. I'm out there with my shark.
Send that to you.
That's gonna go. That's gonna be your next video. Is you with a hoover
I'm
sharking.
That's, but it's not a hoover, is it?
Just put the Jaws background music in the background for me. And in this podcast clip, if we haven't got that sorted, I'll be upset.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Obviously, you're now client and delivered socials. You've had some experiences in the past. Can I ask why you chose us and didn't stick with where you were before?
You came into my world organically, and actually through other contacts. I cannot begin to express just how highly thought of you guys actually are. And I was slightly intimidated by that, and I'm not going to lie, because I genuinely thought it was a bit, you won't want to kind of be with me. It's kind of a bit not sexy, really, just dealing with care. And I was really anxious about that. And we've not ever talked about this, so I can see
just why it's on camera.
Face. Yeah. But you came into my world and you were just super lovely. And actually, moreover, you were just interested in us. Our marketing group that we'd chosen before are really well known within Home Instead. And actually, that was both a blessing and a curse. Because it was actually Becky, going back to Becky initially, that said to me, she said, Helen, your Facebook posts don't tell me anything about you. She said, I know what you're doing. I know who you are. She said, and everything you're putting out there doesn't say any of that. She said, in her words were, she said, it's just vanilla. And it stung, because actually I genuinely thought we were just going to create content and it would be fine, and these people were well known. I met with Terence on one of your social clinics, and that, in fact, he was there for about an hour and 45 minutes actually in my office, was just, it blew me away. I genuinely hadn't looked at our marketing in the way that Terence brought it into us, what we needed to do. You and I then had a Zoom call and chatted about, you talked about chaining up your grandma. You know, it was just this kind of slightly enlightening, slightly actually alarming directness over who we needed to be in order to not be everybody else. And the thing is, we spend so much of our day trying to not be everybody else, but our marketing didn't show that.
Joe, it's really interesting you say about the social clinics, because I think anyone who has a social clinic would sit there and say they feel exactly the same. They go through that process. But if you try to explain to someone brand new, if we go and get Bob back and you say, do you want a social clinic? They don't get it unless they sit in that seat. God forbid they get to a director's day, because that's a social clinic on steroids at that point.
Yes, indeed.
And so it's really interesting to hear it, because people, it's lovely to hear. And you know, just for the record, Terence today, he was going through some of your content, and he turned around and said, just Helen's a dream client. And I went, oh, is she now? and said, like, she just does stuff and sends it. And that works really, really well, because you've always been good personally at putting your story out there.
Yeah. Definitely,
without a doubt. And everyone would agree with that. Actually, the Home Instead Portsmouth stuff is rocking. Like, there's some really good stuff happening out there now. All the hard work you do and advocacy you put out there is now starting to see light. Yeah. And it's just so key. It's just so key.
And I think, well, certainly from my perspective, I'm just really super grateful to you guys. You know, you've always been responsive and reactive and positive about what we're doing. And we meet so much opposition in everything else that we do. You know, there's so much competition out there. And I use that term loosely because, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, there isn't any competition out there for you or for us.
No, I get that. I get that.
You know, and it's getting people to understand that actually one size does not fit all. Just because it says marketing in the name doesn't actually mean it's doing anything for you.
You talked about the kind of franchise having a group that they were working with, and you know, I know through speaking to a couple of partners that they're splitting away and whatnot.
Yep.
One of your other partners asked me a very good question, and they said, you know, would you want to take all of the home instead? And I said no.
Well, I asked you that before.
I said absolutely not, because I can't deliver very well in Warrington compared to Surrey and Hampshire. I just can't do it. I haven't got the people. I don't have the local knowledge. Actually, and the locality, as we've learned with Portsmouth for you, really matters. Yeah. This is not the same as Guildford. It just isn't. And it's very interesting to have that question. And
actually, I think that's ultimately where, to quote Becky, the vanilla content comes in. Because Home Instead is a very, on one level, easy to market company. Our brand's very clear. We've got a very nice colour scheme. We've got some very nice kind of generic photos within all of that. And if we were just to use that, you'd get some kind of understanding of who we are. But the individual offices, which are all owned individually, need to stand out on their own, because the offices are not here the same as Guildford, the same as Warrington, the same as Newcastle, the same as Glasgow. The areas that we are within, that we are operating within, have got to be as unique as the people operating them. And to be able to do that successfully, you've got to have local people helping you who understand the area that you're in. And actually, the company that we originally talked about, they have a very personal background with Home Instead. They know us as a brand very well, but they lack the local knowledge of what's important. And the brand will stand up, but it then becomes vanilla.
It's a bit like the 15-minute and the hour-long visits.
It just ended up hitting within there. And so I feel really, really fortunate to have had you guys come into my world. I think it's a game changer, quite frankly, for all of us.
Well, that's it. We got what we wanted. Podcast done.
Move over. But, you know, for me, it's so pivotal. And funnily enough, having people at Terence's personal little clips make me laugh a lot. And
they give me HR complaints.
Oh, well, yes, I read one of the comments the other day and I thought, oops. But actually, taking them with the spirit in which they are actually delivered, you know, and that's what was missing in the comments that came back. The spirit in which this is delivered is because Terence is a Pompey boy. He's proud of his city. He knows it inside and out, and he absolutely sings it. Most cities would kill for that.
There's a few places, people in Gosport that would like to kill him for it.
Maybe, but you know, but actually, I grew up in Newcastle, in fact, in Northumberland. But the rivalry between cities, you've got Newcastle and Sunderland. You know, it's going to be lifelong. You've got Portsmouth and Southampton and Gosport, but you've got all of those kind of bits. That's a fun thing, you know. That's not just something that's here, but building on that, having those people that understand the challenges. And that's a conversation that you and I've had with your Guildford office versus what Portsmouth looks like.
Very different.
They're very, very different. And looking at the two previous offices that I've been directly involved in, one in Mid Surrey, one just down the road, they're different again. You know, each office is hugely different to the other ones. And therefore, having people who understand the challenges, who understand the economics, who understand what it looks like to live and breathe in that city. Have you really captured it in all of your images? Do we actually get that? You guys get it in spades. And that I couldn't be more thankful for.
Ladies and gents, Helen from Home Instead. Thank you very much for being a part of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.